Hello, everyone. We're going to get into our next video, which we should be still in chapter two, but part five, and we'll actually be in chapter two um, as we move forth here. I'm going to turn that down a little bit. All right. Okay, so we're just going to fly through this. So, chapter two is the strategy formulation process, what it is we're doing exactly, so on and so forth. So that gets into developing a strategic vision, mission, and values. Vision is where are we going? Mission is what's our main purpose. Most of the time, I think most text will talk about setting a mission statement first, where what is our purpose? And we're trying to figure out what is our purpose? Like, what are we supposed to be doing now? Then you create a vision statement, which is where are we going? And then you create a value statement. How are we going to get there? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? And what are we not going to do? What would we be unwilling to do? So those three things, we establish that. Then from there, you create objectives. Then you try to create a strategy to achieve those objectives. Then you execute the strategy, and then you evaluate how is it going and make changes if necessary to go back to this one. Now, as we said in the first two or three pages of that master strategy tools thing I gave you, a lot of managers, a lot of senior executives do not like to do strategic planning in part because it changes and it can change so quickly and it can change anymore, especially in the, I would say, 2000s onward. Things can change overnight where you do have to ask the question, is this even worthwhile to sit down and do this? So that research that discovered that was like from the 1960s, 70s, 80s timeframe. So, 50 years later, it's even worse now. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't do strategic planning and you shouldn't go through this process. As we are there, though, the one thing I will try to, let me pull this down so I can see me. All right, we're going to stop the share and we're going to start it again. Let's try to just get the screen. Okay, so in the master strategy and tools, now we'll talk about this in a minute. That's page 30. We need to remember that. We'll come back to that in a second. Um, I think it was somewhere around pages 10, 15, somewhere in there. Um, we talk about there it is. We talk about this idea of strategic planning. And in this diagram, that's called strategic management. And that's really what it is you're trying to scale some sort of system or way of doing something to a high level. My apologies if I'm essing you to death here. It's sharp in my ear too, so I'm going to turn it down a little. Um, in strategic management, you found what works, then you're going to formalize it. You're going to strategize. You're going to processize it. You're going to turn it into a functional step so you can recreate it so you can do it over and over again. Okay. Sometimes we call that scaling it. So when that's done, that's what you do in strategic management. You've answered some of those questions, but a lot of businesses, and frankly, one of the reasons we don't see this in this day and age, I shouldn't, how am I trying to say this? Here's what I'm thinking. So mission statements, vision statements, those ideas, those came around in like the 70s, 50s, 60s, 70s, that time frame. I want to say Peter Drucker, I don't know if he invented it, but he definitely was a proponent of it and made it famous. So that's what all companies and businesses did. In 1980, if you went to business school, they would teach you to write a mission statement, as we're going to talk about here shortly. The question, though, is in the modern era, when you haven't evolved to the next thing you have to become as a company, again, that's a painful, like hard process, and it takes a lot of deliberation, and you're unsure because you always have to operate that you don't know what's going to happen next because you literally don't know what's going to happen next. So in that process, if you try to do strategic planning or strategic management when you don't know what way to go, then the danger of that is you're going to spend all this time and you're saying as much of what you're not going to do is what you're going to do. When you set a mission and a vision, it's the combination of we're going to go over here, we're not going to go over there to get to here. We're just going to try to go in a straight line, and this is how we're going to do it, and here's our path, and we have to buy the resources to travel on this path, and we have to do all this stuff. So again, you're in the process of saying as much of what you're going to do, how you're going to get there, is what you're not going to do, and the danger of that is, well, maybe you're missing a really huge opportunity. So let's make sure. Okay. So when we create the vision, the mission, and the values, the danger of doing that when you're not in that process is again, you're telling how we're going to do it. You have to be willing to change as well. Um, Change is required in this day and age. So another thing to think about is the mission statement in the vision statement, is it broad enough but narrowly focused enough to get hit the target uh, in the manner in which you want to hit it? So, and again, that takes a lot of experience. That's why you don't see 25-year-old CEOs around. And even when you do have CEOs, there's not a ton of CEOs that start at age 35 as a CEO, and then they go to another company, and then they go to another company, and then they go to another company. CEOs on average don't work but maybe two companies at most, and those are the famous ones. Okay, so chapter two talks a little bit about shaping the decision. How are you going to decide what you're going to do and what is that going to look like? And they talk about external considerations and internal considerations. Um, we see this when we do a SWOT analysis. Okay, so a lot of the tools you're going to find in here, the textbook may or may not call them what the generally accepted known definition of these things are, because they probably don't have permission to share it as a textbook. For example, if you get into conflict resolution, the textbook can't use the same verbiage as the Thomas Keelman instrument because they don't have permission to use it, and therefore they can't publish it. We in a classroom can talk about this stuff all day long. So just so you're aware, that's where some of this is coming. So I want to go through a few of these. When we're looking at our strategy, one, does sticking with the company's present strategy course present attractive opportunities for growth and profitability? Anytime you hear the term growth, I want you to instantly think of Ansoff Matrix. What kind of competitive forces in the industry are industry members facing, and are they acting to enhance and weaken the company's prospects for growth and profitability? Oh, sounds like Porter's five forces. What factors are driving the industry change, and what impact on the company's prospects will they have? That's kind of a pestle analysis. What's going on in the world that would cause the industry to change? How are industry rivals positioned, and what strategic moves are they likely to make next? That's a combination of Porter's five forces and some game theory. Okay. Trying to figure out, if we go high, what does our direct competitor do? Or what do our other competitors that aren't direct competitors do? What are the key factors of future competitive success, and does the industry offer good prospects for attractive profits for companies possessing these capabilities? That all would be rooted in Porter's five forces. Now we talk a little bit internally. When we look at our strategy and formulating it, does the company have an appealing customer value proposition? As a side note, here this afternoon, I just contacted Amazon because my daughter had ordered these special stickers. She's kind of entrepreneurial and she's making lip gloss, I guess, something like that. And she wanted to have these special stickers that kind of like, if this seal is broken, then it's been opened before, and she wanted it sealed closed, doesn't matter. We ordered about 100 of those for $7 or $8 and got a message from Amazon that they had come, we'd received them. And I thought, oh, here we go. Not only did we not receive them, well, maybe we did receive them. Maybe it was in another box. Like most households, we have about 4 or 5 shipments from Amazon a week. Don't remember, and there's too much going on. I don't want to waste my time trying to figure this out. But I thought, well, I'll file a not a complaint, but I'll send something to their customer service because they usually have pretty decent customer service. I did, and within 10 minutes, we had gone from I never received this to their AI chat system told me they would send a new a replacement of that item in less than 10 minutes. Now think about that for a second. That is an appealing value proposition is when, especially when the cost is so small, it costs $8, but if you waste my time, then I'm less likely to go shop at Amazon again. When you fix it in a short amount of time, I am very much more likely to continue shopping there online. Um, just that, so that's a pretty strong value proposition. Um, Internally, again, what are the company's competitively important resources and capabilities, and are they potent enough to produce a sustainable competitive advantage? That SCA that we're talking about. In other words, VRIO. Does the company have sufficient business and competitive strength to seize market opportunities and nullify external threats? So you have a little bit of value disciplines, little Ansoff matrix, and a little bit of that stupid song just popped into my head. One little banana. Nah, who cares? Um, do we have a sustainable competitive advantage? Excuse me, are the company's costs competitive with those of key rivals? There's a diagram. I'm actually going to hit stop here for a second that I want to share with you. Um, when we look at making decisions uh, from a perspective of a business, especially if we're selling, well, either products or services. So give me one second here. Okay, so if we look at this diagram here real quick, I want you to mentally keep this in mind when we're talking about value propositions. I'll often say this is when the manager needs to do their job correctly. So when you price any product or service, you want to do it strategically. You never want to be in a position where you as a marketing manager are offering a lower quality product at a higher price. Okay. You don't ever want to be in that situation because especially if we're talking sales, there's no way to overcome that objection. When you offer a product that is both better and better priced or lower priced, competitors can't compete with that. They just can't do it. So the problem though is if you have a product or service that you are selling and it is higher quality and it's lower priced, that sounds like, well, that's a good thing. We should get all the business. And you might get a lot of business. You're never going to probably get all the business or all of the market. Um, but when you're looking at that, you do want to take into consideration that, well, you could make more money if you increase the price strategically ever so much. Okay. And maybe you raise it up 3% just to see, do you sell the same amount and, how much additional comes in. So when we talk about this idea of product pricing, you're always mentally thinking about this diagram. The lower the price, well, probably should the lower the quality. And then if you imagine on here putting all of the different products that your product line is competing with, you put them on here to ask, is this strategically priced? Okay. Is it both your products and the competitor's product? Is it strategically placed on that number line? The higher the price, then the higher the quality in the market, not just in the company, which wouldn't make sense because you don't compete with yourself. All right, let's keep rocking and rolling in the free world. Okay, so those are just some internal, external considerations. Your textbook talks a little bit about a strategic inflection point, and that's usually a moment in time where if you're going to change how you're operating, now would be the time to do it. To start exploring the risks. Maybe it's your fiscal year end or something like that, or you're getting ready to make a huge investment into a certain product line, and now's the time to start saying, can we continue to follow this core competency or this sustainable competitive advantage? Or is there something happening externally that is going to cause us to have to reformulate that? Then you have what's called a strategic plan, which maps out where a company's headed, tries to establish strategic and financial targets, outlines the competitive moves and approaches to be used in achieving the desired business results. So, your book talks a little bit about how to develop a strategic vision. A vision is usually where are we going? You want it effectively communicate, and your textbook talks about just analyzes some different strict vision statements by different companies. So they go in there and they would argue that an effectively worded vision statement possesses each part here. And they look at things that you don't want to have in a or negatives, the pros and cons of vision statements. And then they analyze four different ones. Now, guys, there's huge companies out there that have absolutely boring, dry, don't care about it mission statements and vision statements. Like some of them have, we're just trying to sell a product that people will want. And that's a mission statement. I think it's like American Express or one of them was just it doesn't follow anything we're going to talk about. Well, guess what? The company's still functional. Why? Because they have a value proposition that's very competitive. So even though you have a wonderful vision statement, doesn't mean a good vision statement helps everyone within the organization and everyone external to the organization see where this company is where they're trying to go, how they're trying to get there. I like this one. Vision statement for Whole Foods. Whole Foods Market is a dynamic leader in quality food business. We are a mission-driven company that aims to set the standards of excellence for food retailers. We're building a business in which high standards permeate all aspects of our company. Quality is a state of mind at Whole Foods Market. Our motto, Whole Foods, I'm not even going to keep reading this. Some of the positives, it's forward looking, which a vision statement should be. It's graphic. They're actually, when you read it, you could imagine it in your mind. It's pretty targeted and focused, and it's desirable. The downsides, nobody's going to remember that. If some companies will make their employees memorize the mission and vision and value statements, nobody's going to try to remember that. Okay, it's not memorable. There's too much going on there. Dr. Pepper, a leading producer and distributor of hot and cold beverages to satisfy every consumer need, anytime, anywhere. Again, focused, desirable, easily communicated, not graphic. What does it look like for every consumer to be satisfied? What is a satisfied consumer? And it's very bland. It's not distinctive. Caterpillar, our vision is a world in which all people's basic needs, such as shelter, clean water, sanitation, food, and reliable power, are fulfilled in an environmentally sustainable way, and a company that improves the quality of environment and communities where we live and work. Um, that would be desirable, and it's fairly graphic. What's wrong with it? You're Caterpillar, not the United Nations or the U.S. government. Okay. Caterpillar's not, they might be a small little part of trying to accomplish those huge goals. They're not going to be the big part. They're not going to be the one to do it. Why? Because they're a tractor company. They build machinery. That's what they do. Um, it has a lot of superlatives, superlative. I can't say that word. Whatever. Not very distinctive. It's not saying what Caterpillar is doing differently. Last one, Nike Incorporated fosters a culture of invention. We create products, services, and experience for today's athletes while solving problems for the next generation. Forward-looking was flexible. It allows for Nike to be able to maneuver in there. First off, it doesn't tell you what they're inventing. They're just telling you they're innovative and they like to excuse me. Problems vague, not focused, too reliant on those superlatives. I can't say that. You can read it. Okay, now that's a great analysis, but by the book, but I would tell you that In so many cases, companies write these mission and vision statements because you have investors that want to make sure a company has a vision and mission. That's the only reason the company's doing it. They're not doing it because it's necessarily effective. One of the arguments I would make, and I've seen this at some companies, as I said before, I thought it was John Deere that had a very generic mission and vision statement, and that's fine. If you don't want to waste a lot of time, then just put something up there to say, yes, we have a vision statement. Most of our employees understand the general idea of the mission and vision statement. Good to go. Other companies will live and die by their mission and vision statement. Every employee must memorize it. If you don't, you'll, I don't know, get hit on the hand with a wet noodle. So my point behind saying that is you could knock almost any vision statement or mission statement. These are just one set of criteria to analyze it. Um, to have an engaging and inspirational vision is good. Obviously, a textbook on strategic planning and strategic management is going to talk about the importance of a vision statement. You want it to be evoke positive support, try to get an emotional reaction by those that are reading it in a positive way, not a negative way, and talks about the commitment of the company's personnel to engage in actions and move the company in its intended direction. That's the main uh, idea behind having a strategic vision. And that can be very effective. Now, as we said here in 5 videos back when we started chapter 2, I would argue very strongly that you're going to want to know most of the stuff that we found in those strategies and tools Word document. You're going to want to do some sort of Porter's Five Forces, a pestle analysis, value disciplines. Let's see what else. Core competencies, sustainable competitive advantage. If you don't have those written down on paper as you're looking at the world, then creating a vision or a mission that has nothing to do with those, it will actually probably do you more damage than good because investors will read that and look at it and say, that's not what you're doing. You're doing this. So you want, again, the vision and mission to be in alignment. And that's why we review all those tools. Um, Here's just a couple others. Disney's vision statement to create happiness by providing the finest in entertainment for people of all ages everywhere. I actually do kind of like that one. I think Disney does. They're a company that usually preaches and employees follow those visions and those missions. The Mayo Clinic, the best care to every patient every day. Now, I like this. I think that's a good one, especially for Mayo Clinic because it's one of the usually top 5 rated hospitals and healthcares in the world. The problem is, I bet Brookings Hospital here in South Dakota might also have a mission or vision statement that says something effectively like that. What's wrong with that? What's wrong is to the best care to every patient every day. There's a dot, 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 and that is that we can provide given our limited resources. The Mayo Clinic has not limited resources relative to the Brookings Hospital. So they can kind of say this and it actually means something where how are you going to achieve that? Brookings Hospital doesn't have those resources necessarily to achieve that. That doesn't mean they shouldn't provide wonderful care. Greenpeace, that's an environmental nonprofit organization to halt environmental abuse and promote environmental solutions. I don't know if I get a charge out of that one. Um, so one of the reasons you want a sound, well-communicated strategic vision and mission statement is it helps those internally to forecast what steps to take next. Now, as we mentioned before, over and over and over again, when you create a vision and mission, you're communicating as much what you're not going to do as what you are going to do. So the downside to that is hopefully with those senior executives, yes, we have a vision. Yes, we have a mission. Here's how we want to accomplish that. But you need to have enough experience and knowledge to know when you've been given an opportunity and then now what do you do with that opportunity? Do you grab a hold of it or do you ignore it? And that can be kind of dangerous. Um, what happens when you don't have it. The book talks a little bit about having a rudderless decision making. So, a good mission and vision statement really can help tell the internal employees what you should do next when you can't ask a higher up because maybe they're in a foreign country and it'd just be too hard. Um, it can help win support from employees. Whoops. Helps again tell almost like a rudder, helps mid and low level management to figure out how did they contribute to that mission and vision. And it helps the company prepare for the future based on what we're looking at. Again, in 2025, you got to be careful because things change so quickly. You don't know if the whole industry can be revolutionized within less than a year. And then all of a sudden, you have this mission statement and vision statement that is so utterly irrelevant. So, something to think about. So, they talk about a mission statement that's different from the vision statement, as that is the purpose. Why are we here today? What are we trying to achieve? Usually, the mission statement will talk a little bit about the products, main products or services. Um, it should address the customer or the buyer that it's trying to satisfy. It will talk to the customer groups, um, or to those it serves, trying to communicate that mission. Specifies its approach to pleasing customers. What does that mean? Well, when we talked about our value disciplines, okay, we had three value disciplines. You have product leadership, customer intimacy, also known as good customer service or the best total solution, which is the price relative to quality in a sweet spot that customers want. Or you have operational excellence, which is the low cost. Okay. What are you trying to achieve and how are you trying to achieve it? Walmart does not want to sit here and focus on customer service or customer intimacy because the reason is people go there to buy cheap products overall. Okay, there are sources for cheaper products elsewhere, but when you look at everything you buy for groceries, they're usually, you add it all up, it's usually 10% cheaper than other retailers. And it shows how the mission is the company's identity. All right. Strategic vision is just the future business scope, mission statements, the present business and purpose of the company. And let's fly through the rest of it. Uh, this one I thought was kind of interesting. So, St. Jude's Research Hospital's mission statement is to advance cures and means of prevention for pediatric catastrophic diseases through research and treatment, consistent with the vision of our founder, Danny Thomas. No child is denied treatment based on race, religion, or a family's ability to pay, which I would say that's the big one. So maybe saving it for last is the right one. Is many hospitals, if you don't have insurance, you can't go there. Sometimes you want to talk about just the nuts and bolts. The danger of just talking about we produce a product and sell it just high enough to earn a little bit of a profit margin for our company would not be a great mission statement. Is it in most business that's assumed. We assume you're already doing that because if you're not doing it in your business, well, you're probably going to fail relatively quickly. Um, the profit is more of the objective, and it's the who, what, where, when, why, and how are you doing that is what should be communicated. And let's keep rocking and rolling. So the values help provide guidance for desired action and behaviors of employees and managers and leaders as they conduct the company's business. At values-driven companies, executives walk the talk, or talk the walk, or walk the talk, both of those, and so do the company personnel. When my wife 20 years ago started working at Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing, also known as 3M, they're the folks that make the Scotch tape and the Band-Aids. They touted that, and they actually had a criteria on performance evaluations that talked about how are you as an individual are living 3M values of innovation and quality or something like that. That is a value statement. It's we're not here to be the cheapest. We're here to create innovative products that other people are not able to create and to achieve. And here are a list of other values that the company may adopt. Treating others fairly, customers and employees, treating others with honor and integrity, being ethical, being innovative, doing teamwork, passion for excellence, social responsibility. We'll talk about that later, and community citizenship. My former employer 100 years ago was a bank in the community of Brookings, and we were given, I want to say, like 20 hours a year, and you were required to go work with some charity of some sort in the community. And because the uh, the bank was very, very, very much about community citizenship. And we've already talked about this and just a bunch of vernacular that we're not going to worry about. So one of the questions when you're creating vision statements and mission statements and strategies is talking about financial objectives you're trying to set and achieve. Um, we did talk about financials. One of the things I want you to remember is that there are different parts to financials. Um, in some industries, you want to focus on certain financial metrics versus other industries that focus on different ones. So we're not going to worry about that. Always to remember that most financial metrics are lagging indicators, meaning there's leading and lagging indicators. A leading indicator is like a forecast. You're trying to forecast what's next going to happen, and you have a metric that gives you an indication of that. A lagging indicator is here's how you performed last year or last month. So you might have huge profits or earnings from the previous year, but that year already happened. Next year's a different story. So typically, those financial metrics are related to revenue growth, profitability or in earnings, and overall return on investment because we're almost all businesses are owned by someone. Um, and then you need to know that when we're trying to create strategic objectives that align with the vision and mission statement, a lot of the time we're talking about marketing, which is why you have to take Marketing 370. And in a marketing plan, it's how are you going to achieve this? Hopefully, those are in alignment with the financials of the company. How are you going to achieve this? How are you going to make it happen? I want you guys to memorize how I taught you that you have business objectives or strategic objectives, and then you have financial objectives. Financial strategies, financial objectives should flow from business and strategic objectives. Okay. Not the other way around, because that's the tail wagging the dog and it doesn't work real well. We already talked about the balanced scorecard, which is created to look at four different criteria. One was financial, one was, I think, customer care or customer service. How about we just go look? Make sure I'm, whoop, no, I don't want to chat. Oh, come on. How about we go faster? There we go. No, BCG matrix. We'll get there. Got to be a little patient. There we go. Our balanced scorecard created by Robert Kaplan and David Norton. They have a financial sector, customer service focus, internal process focus, and learning and growth focus. One of the things I would argue, balanced scorecards don't usually work real well for like companies like a Walmart that are an operationally excellent firm. I mean, they could obviously, but well, let's use that. For a balanced scorecard of Walmart, and you talk about customers, one of the things you might want to prevent is just customer irritation or customer cognitive dissonance. So it doesn't mean we want to increase our customer service or how nice our employees are to our customers, because when management focuses on that, then it's taking their eye off the ball to do what they're supposed to be doing. Okay. Which Walmart is not trying to be a customer intimate firm. So you can still use this. Learning and growth actually was one that I would say does not work real well for operational excellence. Because it's very costly to take care of your employees in order to look at it from that perspective. All right, so let's leave that at that. That's a balanced scorecard. Oh, here are just some other objectives in the balanced scorecard when you're looking at it. Um, yeah, we're not going to get into that. We already talked about it. So I take a picture of that one. Take a picture. You have the video. You can do a screenshot. Crafting a strategy means asking these 6 questions. How do we attract and please customers? How do we compete against others? How do we position the company in the marketplace to capitalize on attractive opportunities so we can grow the business? So, how do we grow the business and not die? How best do we respond to changing economic and market conditions? How do we manage each functional piece of business? How do we achieve the firm's performance targets, usually financial targets? Um, Usually anymore, I think most companies are pretty good about creating actually what we call as management by objective or MBOs, which is cascading goals. So if you imagine at the top, the strategic plan is created. Um, Underneath there, you usually have an operational plan that's usually done for about a 1 to 2 year period. And then you have the tactical plan, which is usually 6 months or less. And at each level, you have managers that can be involved in trying to organize in order to accomplish the vision and the mission and those types of things. So it's not only for an organization at the very top of the hierarchy, although 50 years ago it very much was that. Um, it works better if it's collaborative because then employees are into engaging. So you have a couple different classifications. You will need to know this. You have corporate strategy establishes an overall game plan for managing a set of businesses in a diversified multi-business company. What does that mean, Bruce? Let's use 3M. So 3M used to, they don't anymore, but they oversaw 6 different divisions. They had a customer or a consumer division. They had a industrial division that like made epoxy for airplanes. They had a healthcare division. They had all these divisions. So in that, when you're at the top of that hierarchy, your strategy is not going to be to reduce costs for Scotch tape. Okay. Because you have 5 other business lines that are, that it doesn't fit. So for an overall overarching corporate strategy, you're trying to figure out, well, what is it we're here to do? So 3M adopted innovation sort of as a way of life. Then you have a business strategy. So imagine one kind of step maybe lower down, but it's asking, how do we strengthen the company and better place the company in a market position and build a competitive advantage in either more of a single business or a divisional setting of a business? Okay. So again, I like to think of the business strategy as maybe like one step lower than a corporate strategy. Um, this just talks about the strategic making hierarchy. Um, your book does a pretty good job at talking about functional environments versus general environments and how that gets split out. I'm not going to get into that. You can reread that diagram if you wish. And this is where we get into those different hierarchies of strategy. So you have corporate, then you have business, then you have functional and operating. Depending on what textbook you look at, you're going to have, these are going to be called different things. They all mean the same thing though. The top level strategy is like for a conglomerate, it oversees multiple business lines. The one below that kind of protects as a sustainable competitive advantage and core competency. The one under that breaks it out per divisional operational department. And then below that is an operating strategy, which is kind of created by the next level down per each product manager of each product line. I'm just going to let you read that. Okay, we're going to be done. Um, yeah, let's go ahead and stop here. So that gets us through chapter two. I know that was a lot, and most of it wasn't actually in the chapter. But the reason I'm going through that is I don't know what your background is when it comes to strategic management, strategic planning. So to understand all of those tools is an absolute must. And again, in my mind, you can't really do strategic planning, vision statements, mission statements, value statements, and objectives unless you understand sustainable competitive advantage, because that's what it's supposed to be trying to achieve. And that's the criteria from which you do that. So all of those tools, I think it's like 10 of them out of the 15 that we found in that master strategy and tools document relate to how are you going to create the strategy, and how does it fit in a line within the overall operation of the company. So let's stop there and hope you enjoyed the video. You probably didn't, but that's okay. Hopefully it wasn't too long or painful, and we will see you next time in chapter 3.